right, everybody, I am back with a brand new DC update for you guys. And it's getting interesting out there with the actor strike. And I'm actually going to show you what is being negotiated between SAG-AFTRA and the studios. And it's pretty bad. It's not looking good for the studios. And we're going to look at the repercussions of this. But first, let's take a look at the DC-specific materials. Now, for those who didn't know, today is the day where The Flash has hit digital media platforms. You can go to Vudu, you can buy it. You can go to Amazon and buy it. You can buy it on all the different social or the digital media platforms. But know that you don't own it when you do that. I am a physical media person, and one day I will show you guys my theater room. I'll show you some photos and all the movies that I own, as well as the TV shows. And I actually added a couple of TV shows on physical media last week during the Amazon Prime Day. I picked up Chips, and I also picked up the show Emergency on DVD. I don't usually buy DVDs. TV shows, older TV shows I will buy from the 80s and 70s if they're not on Blu-ray. So I was able to pick up those couple of sets because these things right now are not streaming. It's interesting what you can find streaming and what you can't. But just know that when you buy stuff digitally, you don't own it, which is interesting. Now, I want to address a couple of things before we look at the photos here. I've had some comments that are very interesting on my feed, coming up through the YouTube, comment section. The one I want to address is people will come in and say the general audiences did not resonate with Zack Snyder. That is a lie, okay? That is a straight up lie, and this can be proven by numbers. This is something easy to prove because all you have to show is how many tickets were sold versus other films. And I will tell you everything through Aquaman sold way more tickets than anything after. And it's the fact that the general audience just is not interested in the DC universe anymore because of what the studios have done. It's a fact. People say, well, more people went and saw the Batman. No, they didn't. They sold less tickets to the Batman. And if you take into account inflation, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, all of those movies, even Suicide Squad, made way more money than the Batman did. So for all those people who come in and say it just did not resonate with general audiences, it's a crazy, false statement. And you can easily see that because way more people went to see those films than they did current films. Okay? It's just a fact. You can't deny it. You can't say anything different. It is a fact that the general audience was more interested back then than they are now. All right, so let's take a look at some photos here. So the first photo I have up here has to do with Christopher Nolan and whether he will ever direct another Batman film. So this was when he sat down with a French interviewer, and these are the things that came from this interview. He will never make a TV series. Also, he no longer wants to make superhero films. Now it says he no longer wants to. I think if the right deal came, I think he probably would. He also declined to say if he would ever direct a Star Wars film. Now that, I think, would be amazing. I would love to see his take on the Star Wars universe. Also, he says he will still be making films in 10 years. He will never have a TikTok account, and it's not a problem for him to watch films on phones or computers. Kind of interesting stuff coming from the man himself. All right, this goes back to what I talked about a few minutes ago with The Flash making its digital debut. The Flash has ended its theatrical run, making less than Green Lantern did at the domestic box office. Prior to release, Warner Brothers execs hadn't been this hopeful for a DC project since The Dark Knight. That's kind of their mantra with every single film that gets released. And honestly, I do have to say I am surprised The Flash did bomb this bad. I can't believe it. To make less money than Green Lantern, I mean, come on. This had Michael Keaton back as Batman. It just shows you how the boycotts are working and that the studios are suffering because people just don't want to go see these movies because of the decisions that the studios have made. Now, this is something interesting. This is a quote from Zack Snyder. He said it was cool to do the Snyder Cut of Justice League, and that was fun and everything. But Warner Brothers still tortured me the whole time for whatever reason. They can't help it. I don't know why I'm such an effing pain in their ass, because I'm not trying to be. Honestly, Zack Snyder. And he never was. He is a very cordial, nice guy. He doesn't burn bridges. But Warner Brothers has treated him and all of the fans of the DCEU very poorly. They just spit in the face of Snyder and their fans all the time. Now, this is pretty cool. McFarlane Toys has announced that they're going to have a massive digital partnership with Warner Brothers. And it says it all begins at San Diego Comic-Con 2023 with multiple exclusive DC drops. Like, comment, and share for a chance at a Allow list. That's pretty cool. Now, I'm not a big digital person, but there are lots of digital things that people can purchase that are unique to them. We'll see what McFarlane does come up with. It's going to be interesting. And if you guys are interested in finding out what happens at the San Diego Comic-Con in regards to DC, stick to my channel. I will be covering all the news as it does get released. All right, and the last few photos I have here for the DC stuff before we talk about the strike are pretty awesome. These are from The Flash, and this was going to be the post-credit scene that was going to have Ben Affleck as Batman saying he needs the help of the Flash, and it was supposed to tie in nicely. That color suit is better than what we actually saw in the film. I don't like how they color corrected it. I still don't like the look of the suit. You're going to get a better look at it here in a minute. Yeah, like I don't like this armor at all. Like bullets could go right through that. I'm not understanding why it looks like that, but it's what they decided to do. There's Andy himself talking with Ben Affleck. And then the last photo here is what it would look like with all the CGI and what it was going to look like probably in the film. So this obviously was cut. I'm eager to get my hands on the physical copy of The Flash. I'm excited to see all of the deleted scenes and see what was left out. And this is, you can see this is Aaron Bailey art. They did the background stuff to make it look like it was coming from the film. Now, as you guys know, I am a voice actor. It's what I do for a living. And this is something that came from SAG-AFTRA in regards to Netflix. And I'm going to explain what this would actually mean. It says Netflix currently has a clause and at least one voiceover contract or contracts that would allow them to use an actor's work with AI and continue to use this actor's voice on any and all future projects without ever needing to ask the actor or pay the actor. Now, this is why the strike is going on, and for people who don't understand how dire this is, this would be like you getting a job, and in your contract, you probably didn't understand what was talked about in there, but you go into work one day, and you find out that you're getting paid for that day's worth of work, and that you have to work for that company forever and never get paid again. That you have to come back to work the next day, but you're not going to get paid for it. That they own you. And that they can use you until you decide to leave that company. And then even after that, they still own you. It's like signing. This is true slavery right here. This is trying to cut out the person who does the work and use it forever. This is known as in perpetuity, and I never sign contracts that have in perpetuity ever. But let's look at some of the other issues that have come out of this. So here is the actual, somebody posted this. This is the actual negotiations. And it says economics, inflation, and wage invasion. Minimums, 11% general wage increase in year one, 4% in year two, and 4% in year three without an inflation-adjusted year one wage increase. Members will be working for lower real wages in 2023 than they earned in 2020 and would likely still be working for lower real wages ever or even in 2026. 5% in year one. So they want to put it down to 5% in year one, 4% in year two, and then 3.5% in year three. Now, to understand something, you have to understand that the average SAG-AFTRA member, okay, this is the union for actors, actresses, writers, everybody, that most people make less than $20,000 a year. And this is why, you have those big, you have some of the members that are big, but most members, people don't realize, Most members in SAG-AFTRA don't even, they can't even get insurance, health insurance, because they don't make enough. So you're really paying for the people who are really high up on the ladder. It says new media revenue sharing. Casts share at the revenue generated with their performances are exhibited on streaming platforms. This would allow casts to share the success of high-performing shows. That was completely rejected, utterly rejected by the studios. Wage invasion due to advanced payment of residuals. Limit the amount of performer salary that can be reduced due to the advanced payment of residuals. Instead of disguising advanced payments of residuals as part of the performer's initial compensation, require transparency with a separate residual check that goes to the union, the same as with all other residuals. They came back and said increase the protective threshold figures in the contract and match terms agreed by Netflix in 2019, but refused the union's request for transparency with a separate residual check. Now, gee, why would they want to do that? Yeah, because they want to take more money away from the performers. Per diem. Adjusted for inflation, the money that members receive to pay for meals and incidentals when traveling for work, not increased since 2001. Now that's pretty crazy. Remedy the studio's systematic non-compliance with the contractual requirement that per diems be paid up front and not weeks later. The union is good for this kind of stuff. They don't pay for things right away. It says increase the amount due by far less than inflation. Ignore the issue of actually making the payment on time. So they don't want to pay people on time. They want to make them wait. Scheduled breaks. The parties have tentatively agreed to conform to the minimum payments that performers must receive before their employers can invoke the various schedules under which members lose entitlement to additional payments, such as weekly overtime. That's the only thing they agreed to. There's two other pages we're going to look at here in a minute. So, Schedule F. Increase the minimum payments for performers working Schedule F, which was intended for star performers who have more negotiation power. But since the rates have not increased in decades, it now sometimes results in those performers earning less than Schedule C, which guarantees a minimum weekly rate and additional payments like weekly overtime. They came back and proposed small increases that do not solve the problem, rejected the portion relating to ensuring a minimum weekly rate for performers working Schedule F. Again, they don't want to have to pay people. And again, you have to understand this isn't just about the blockbuster people. This is just about the little people too. The studios do not want to do their part in making sure people are getting what they should. We're going to skip where it talks about singers, dancers, major role performers. It says the parties have tentatively agreed to extend the major role performer terms to high budget, video on demand series and all seasons of pay TV. We're not going to look at the relocation span. We're not going to look at that. So let's move on to the next page. So here's where things start getting interesting. We're not going to look at wardrobe. We're not going to look at fittings. But let's look at looping, retakes, and added scenes. The parties have tentatively agreed to increase to the money breaks applicable to certain weekly performers whose contracts can include guarantees for looping, retakes, and added scenes, and the creation of such a provision for weekly performers working on theatrical films. This is good that they agreed to this because that does need to be done. As a voice actor, I don't do retakes for free unless it's in the contract from the beginning. If they come back months later, there's got to be compensation for that, and it should be with actors as well. Now, basic respected fairness for background actors. Okay, we're going to look at each of these numbers, and this is crazy. Improve background actors' wages and working conditions. So background actors are the only category under our agreements who work under different terms on the East Coast than they do on the West Coast. SAG-AFTRA is seeking for all background actors to be treated fairly. That was completely rejected. 2. In New York, background actors reporting before 6 a.m. should not be forced to wait in unsafe areas for public transportation. What they offered was additional reporting locations that are likely to be unsafe at early mornings, which is crazy. So they're saying they didn't fix it. They offered more unsafe locations. Number 3, background actors who have to spend their own time styling their hair and or makeup should be compensated for 1.5 hours of work time. They're offering those people just a $35 flat fee. 4, individuals required to do double duty, working as both stand-ins and background on the same day, should be compensated at 150% of the stand-in rate for the day. That was completely rejected. I could tell you that as actors, if somebody does a voiceover in the film, that's 2 different paydays, as it should be. If they're doing stand-ins and background, they should be paid separately, especially if they're standing in for one of the main actors. 5. Stand-ins who are required to rehearse or perform in place of a principal performer should be paid half of the principal performer's rate in addition to their stand-in pay, which should be done. Offered to withdraw for single-camera shows in the agreement to the multi-camera half-hour shows where it is a more common practice. Offered $150 for stand-ins who have to rehearse or perform in place of principal performer on multi-camera half-hour shows. Rejected it for single-camera shows. Again, they just don't want to pay the people for their work. And then background actors who work as the photographic double for a principal performer and are required to memorize and deliver scripted dialogue on camera should be paid a principal day player rate without residuals. All they offered was $150 to background actors who render services as photo doubles or deliver scripted dialogue on camera. That is asinine. That is absolutely asinine. What they're asking for, SAG-AFTRA is asking for, is totally okay and should be. I could tell you that if I'm redoing a voiceover for a company where they tried to do a voiceover first and they didn't like the performance and they come to me, I pay them I charge them my normal rate. They don't get a discount just because they had somebody else do it. I'm still having to do my work. They're not going to pay me less just because they had somebody else already do it. I'm still doing the same amount of work that I would had I been the first person to do it. So they should be paid those rates. I don't think people understand, how critical this is to make sure that it is fair moving forward. So again, with all of that, you have to keep in mind that number that I gave you, that most SAG-AFTRA members, and especially voice actors and other, not big-name actors, make less than $20,000 a year doing work. And because of that, they should be compensated fairly. That's not even the cost of a normal job. And this is why a lot of actors do have other jobs, too, to try and make ends meet. And you can envision with the high cost of California and New York, I don't live in those places simply because it's not manageable. Where I live now is totally manageable. I make a good living as a voice actor where I live, and I don't have to live anywhere specific, but I am not part of SAG-AFTRA. I negotiate my own rates as a non-union voice actor, and I make sure that I am making a good living doing what I do. But the union is there to make sure that these other people in the union paying their dues do get fairly compensated. So there's some shady things going on behind the scenes. All right, so there's my DC and strike update for the day. We will see you guys on the next video.